Liz. Tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. It is evening tea time, and that's right. I am back, and I have a returning guest from season 3, 4, and now he's on season 5. So I guess he enjoys having tea with Miss Liz. So we're gonna do all of the good stuff. We're gonna get the disclaimer going, a little bit of bio, and we're gonna get you over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. We're gonna get you to subscribe to that little doorbell, ring that little bell, so that you can see all these incredible tea times. And if you have any comments or questions or anything, leave them in the comments section. I will be popping up and down. If you'd like to send a private message to Miss Liz so that I can get these questions out to Gerald, I'd be more than welcome to accept those as well. Jump over to Miss Liz's Facebook page for all of that good stuff. So let's get started here and let's spill a third tea time with Gerald. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see a Tea Time on a Monday or Tuesday, it's a surprise Tea Time or a returning guest that got to Miss Liz a little later than the schedule was released. So now a little bit on Gerald. Gerald Everett Jones is a freelance writer who lives in Santa Monica, California. Preacher Stalls a Second Coming is his 14th novel. He has been a longtime board member of the Independence Writers of Southern California, WOSC, and the host of Get Published Radio podcast. He hosts the Bachelor's of Arts with honors from the College of Letters, Wesleyan University, where he studied under novelists Peter Bonkton, Stone Island, F.D. Rees, The Red Machines, and Jervis, I think I'm saying it right, Kostaski. He's going to help me with these. The Painted Bird being there. The issue of book banning is exploring across the country parent activists and lawmakers all demanding the removal of certain books from schools, universities, and public libraries. To know a little bit more on Gerald, jump over to Miss Liz's Facebook page and you'll see his full bio there, and you can subscribe to his channel and his website as well. So let me get Gerald in here and we're going to spill some tea, and I'm going to get him to help me with some of these names. You got my tongue. My tongue is all like, I don't know where I'm going with this. Like, Gerald, help me with some of these names.
Well, the most difficult one of those is Yurtsi Kaczynski, who wrote I think probably the one that would be most familiar to the audience would be Being There, the one that became a movie with Peter Sellers. And Kaczynski, who is deceased some years now, but he was one of my professors in college, and he had come over from the Soviet Union at that time. And I studied Camus and Sartre, actually, in his class. But he's famous for saying that, they asked him, well, why did you come over to the United States? Why did you decide to live here? And in his characteristic Slavic accent. He said, the only moment of true freedom I ever had was in the airplane suspended between the two collectives. And then they said, well, but why here? He says, well, here there are some mountaintops. So he was a exceptionally short fellow, relatively scrawny, masses of dark hair on his head and extremely bushy eyebrows and a perpetual frown. I mean, he was a pleasant enough person to talk to. Not if you asked him a question, he certainly had plenty of things to say. But in terms of sharing things about himself, no. This was just. Now, I was told later, after I graduated, that he was very much a darling of the Manhattan cocktail party set. This was back in the days of like Truman Capote, throwing his parties, and Henry Kissinger and Jill St. John and Frank Sinatra drop in. So
I always love sitting and talking with you because you throw these names at me and I'm just like, yes, we need to talk about these people more.
Well, the thing also knowing him as a young male college student, and my college was all male, I had assumed that if it wasn't a male, back then there were these men's school, and this was what was called Little Ivy League. So there was some prestige, I suppose, about it, competitiveness. But my main thought was, oh, if it's a male school, then I'll really concentrate on my studies.
And we were talking about that backstage, Gerald.
Right. So
about your days in school.
First lesson you learn about the third week is that about all you're going to be thinking about is the road trip for the weekend and who you're going to be able to hitch a ride with to the nearest girls' school. So now they've sent. Let's see, the year, my senior year, they actually admitted 5 women.
Oh, really?
And they were like exchange from like Sarah Lawrence Vassar, and Connecticut College was another one. And but the good news was they were all extremely attractive. The bad news is they wanted nothing to do with any of us as boyfriends because they're afraid if they picked one of them, all the others would hate them.
Well, you were in an all-boys school, and then 5 girls come in, and it's like,
it's like who needs all that mob action, right? So that was a lesson learned, and that was that was some time ago. That was because when I got out of college, my draft number for Vietnam was number 6, and so it came up right away. And but the thing was, I'd had a touch of TB, and not deliberately administered, but and for a while there, the Army didn't believe it, and I actually reported to the induction center. I suppose I would have gotten on the bus if they'd told me, but they finally said no, just go home. So then I had to get a real job. I'd studied acting. I had forsaken my career as a scientist in junior high school. I got second place as a science fair, and I said, no, this is not for me. But
I'm not first place. I know.
Severely disappointed my scientist father, and I didn't raise my son to be an artist. So yeah, I was fighting that battle, most of my life actually, but. No, but I did go away to school, and it was, I didn't get any hard time about that. But when I got out, having been ill, I thought, okay, driving taxis or waiting tables in New York City might not be the best thing for my health, and starving, waiting for the next audition. So I decided I was going to dive into the world of, well, where do they need writers? Oh, advertising. So actually I got sucked back to Chicago because that was the only place I had a room. And so there was I dove into advertising, and I just very rapidly ended up in industrial film. So I actually was an industrial film writer, then got into corporate training, and then got into business graphics and crazy stuff like that. And then actually, my when I started working as a professional writer, soon after that, freelance, I did practically all business and technical how-to books. And this was, the early days of the PCs. And of course, you had to have a book to learn how to, one of my best-selling books was Excel for Windows Quick and Easy. and the lesson was how to balance your checkbook. Now, who does that anymore, right?
You're right. Who even has a
but it was
checkbook anymore?
it was a great lesson there, because the idea was this book was written so in what they called coffee break short lessons.
Oh, I like it.
So and it had color pictures of the screens, and I think the book had value, but
Yeah, because I didn't even know you did how to.
well, yeah, How to Lie with Charts is actually still not only on the shelves, but it's taught at some of the universities. And so every now and then I'll see a 20 or 30 unit sale, and it'll be paperback or hardcover. And it's like, oh, that's a class. That's got to be a class. So I know it's taught at Empire State. It used to be. I know it used to be taught at Georgetown Public Policy Institute, and I used to say, well, if your Congress people are lying to you, maybe it's my fault. So, and actually, in the latest edition, I mean, we didn't necessarily want to make this about this type of stuff, but in the latest edition, I added 2 chapters just to be, inspired by Miss Liz to be, suitably disruptive. The 2 chapters are 11 ways to make fake news and how to abuse metadata.
Oh, well, look at that.
Right. So, and yeah, and this campaign season, here south of the border, that might be a very valuable chapter if you want to recognize, when you're being lied to. But my point back then was actually a fairly serious point, was if you were using PowerPoint, for example, you're probably not aware of all of the design decisions that those programmers put into the software, because that chart has got to fit into a window of a specific size. Okay. It's not like a graphic designer is making decisions about what's going to be clearest to the audience. So the things like, showing a scale going from 0 to 10,000, but I can't show the scale from 0 to 10,000 because the line is just flat. Actually, I'm going to make the scale go from 9,000 to 10,000. Well, if a designer does that, there's actually a break in the scale. It starts at 0, then there's a break, then there's 9,000 to 10,000. Okay, but if Excel does it, it's just 0 to 10,000, and then they distort the hell out of everything. So it's
well, they just jump all over the place, right?
Excel and PowerPoint basically use the same charting engine, that Microsoft developed, but I believe they licensed that probably from the Harvard graphics people. I'm not sure. That goes back a ways, but yeah, there are all kinds of pitfalls with that. And that has been a well-selling book. It sells while I sleep, and that's a beautiful thing for a writer.
Well, I'm glad that I inspired you a little bit.
I had to recycle the lessons learned from that career, because I was doing business graphics. I was a creative director of a computer graphics center that used a room-sized computer to make little color slides, back when they were actually slides, before got projected onto, because the screens were just little 12-inch black and white displays back then. There was graphics wasn't much of a thing.
And you notice that we're going back to the small screens, right? Everything's shrinking.
Well, the whole tablet idea. I mean, this is one thing. I mean, the good news was when my wife's IBM tablet blew up years ago, I made the deliberate decision to buy her Apple products. And it was, and I almost every day I thank God that Apple has such great product support. Okay. And that the people are so patient. But the thing that I can't really get across is, like a lot of younger people, I stuck my foot in my mouth that way. Like a lot of people who have been living with computers for a very long time, she prefers to do everything on her phone.
I'm guilty of that too. I have a
And
tablet,
I
an
try
Apple
to say,
tablet, and I
listen,
don't.
if you'd like to see a bigger menu, a more robust menu, that, because the thing is, if it's on your phone, I mean, it's even true on the computers these days, but because basically, and Apple does it, Microsoft does it, and a lot of developers do it, they just basically hide stuff because they don't want that screen to look cluttered. Because if it looks cluttered, you're going to go, oh, this is too hard. Okay, so you have to know that if I swipe this way, or if I get my pointer up to the top, whoa, there's the menu. Suddenly it showed up. Well, this is called context sensitive response in the programming community. And the way that is translated is, we're only going to show that dummy what they need when they need it, because otherwise they're gonna just be so bewildered by all the choices, they're just gonna not know what to do.
Yeah, I'm that guilty party that clutters my screen, and everyone looks at my screen. They're like, "How do you figure anything out, girl?" And I'm just like, "It's just, I get it.
Well, the other thing maybe nobody told you is, if you keep applications open, a lot of applications open,
Yeah.
you're hogging your memory. You're hogging your random access memory. And back in the days of Windows, that middle button used to be called a minimize button, and of course it minimized the screen down to the corner. But the thing that you don't realize is that that term also meant it minimized the footprint in memory. It freed up that application's memory for the other applications. So yes, you could keep it more running, in fast idle down in the corner, but it wasn't eating up your resources.
Oh, well, that's what my son and my spouse keeps telling me. They're like, "Mom, like, minimize some of this stuff," and I'm just like,
Just
"Leave it alone.
close
It's
it.
fine. I got
Last
it."
time you opened it was a month ago, and you did.
I'm just squashing that brain, right?
Yeah, the phone rang, you walked away, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize I still had that open.
Yeah. No,
So,
when they come and
but
check
when I
in, they're
started
like, "Mom,
watching,
how many?" I'm like, 30 or 40. I don't know. Just swipe. They're like, "Close it."
get rid of the clutter. You need the clutter doctor. No, but I'll jump back on track here, and because I wanted, and actually there's a good payoff with that, because I probably spent a good 20 years writing those kinds of books, and I had a very high powered agent for that, and I was writing for mainstream publishers, and I wrote to outlines. And if I departed from the outline, I got my wrist slapped because I had an editor on my shoulder like 24/7. Okay, but I go, and this was the agent with the dummies books, the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I mean, this was a very profitable nonfiction agency. And I said, hey, I'd like to, I'm really going to turn my attention to fiction, because, life's too short and there's a lot of things I want to do. And it's like, have a nice life. Nice having you in the agency. Send us a postcard when when the movie rights sell.
Well, I can send you a postcard from 40 weeks ago.
So I learned, I was an early adopter of print on demand for paperbacks, and that actually happened. That technology happened before ebooks, a few years before ebooks, and so some of my out of print business books went. I shifted those over to print on demand, and then I was an early adopter also of ebooks, which actually the very first ones, none of mine appeared on Sony tablets, but there were Sony tablets before there was Sony Philips tablets, before there was the Kindle. And
Wow.
and actually at the time, Steve Jobs said, "Oh no, we're never going to put books on phones. We're never going to put books on tablets. That's nuts." And then, of course, he got overruled, and then he wasn't there anymore. But and yeah, I've read books on my Apple tablet as well as my Kindle. But one of the things that I find that's wonderful about that is that if I'm sitting in a departure lounge of an airport, okay, and I just finished my last paperback, but it's at home, okay, and I didn't bring I'm on this trip suddenly, and I didn't pack anything to read, and my flight's in 5 minutes, and I didn't stop in the bookstore, but they might not have had anything in the departure lounge that I wanted to read anyway, because it's just going to be New York Times, genre stuff, right? So, but the thing is, I'm sitting there on my Kindle, I'm browsing the library, and it's like, if you like this, you'll also like this. Oh, fine, click the button. My tablet can hold 1,000 of those.
Oh.
So I don't have to decide what I'm going to read next. It's like I load my tablet up. I get on. I don't, maybe not 1,000 books, but,
you might get me in some trouble here.
half a dozen. I climb on the plane. It's like, no, what should I read today? Now that's sweet. Yeah. Okay. And now I find reading on a tablet I find reading on a tablet, the menus do get in my way. And I'm annoyed that the progress bars disappear now, because see, the paperback, how far along you are.
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm halfway through. I'm actually going to finish this. Sucker.
Right.
But you needed the progress bar to, for that sense of achievement. Because if you've been reading it for 2 weeks and the progress bar hasn't budged, you're reading War and Peace, okay? You're not getting through this book.
Where you're at a slow pace. You're taking it in slow.
Well, I'm a speed reader. I mean, I actually had courses in speed reading, and it was very helpful in college because, cramming for exams and last minute refreshers and, quizzes and like that. No, that speed reading and simply skimming productively. If you run your finger down the page and just keep turning the pages, you'll be amazed. If you haven't done that before, if you haven't tried it, you will be amazed at actually how much you retain. You got the gist.
Yep.
Now, you can't spit it back. And the multiple choice test, you might not pass, but,
Yeah, I was one of those girls that skimmed through books.
It's a study skill. I remember hooking all of the economics exams or classes, and I crammed for the exam, and I got an A-, and the instructor, who very few of the freshmen were signing up for sophomore economics and a major, and he came to me and he says, how'd you like to major in economics? You look like a bright one. I want to keep my job. So
Gerald, let's get ourselves back on track here. We're getting right.
Were we off track? Oh, okay. Yes, okay.
Let's get back on track. Let's get on to this book, the new book that you have out. We talked about it a little bit before we went live, because I was about the preacher. Like, I was like, oh, this preacher, he's a little creepy guy. And we want to get into that new book. We want to get into the new book that you have out. I'm trying to find the title of the book here.
Preacher Stalls the Second Coming is the fourth.
There we go. That's the book.
That's the fourth episode in the Preacher Evan Wycliffe mystery series. And it may be the most controversial. Just very briefly, Preacher Evan Wycliffe is a relatively young Baptist. In the fourth book, he's actually a minister by now of a church in a small farm community. But in the very first book, he's just dropped out of divinity school and then MIT astrophysics, because he can't find any answers anywhere. But he goes back to his his farm roots. And this is in southern Missouri, just north of the Lake of the Ozarks. This is farm country, where it used to be very vibrant family farms, and it's just not anymore. And you won't, I mean, I don't know that it's a depressed area, but the economic boom that's going on in Missouri is a little further south in the Lake of the Ozarks. It's sport fishing and casinos and, all like that. Branson, Nashville South. Okay. So there's that. And when he first returns to the farm, he can get work as a guest preacher, and he can get work as a bill collector, because he knows how to use a laptop and, can chase down people who are behind on their car payments. So, which is, he's a little bit too sympathetic a soul to do that, but it's interesting how that works out. Anyhow, the engine of these mysteries, if you will, it's not like there's always a dead body on the first page. In the very first one, there is a suicide that happens to be his boyhood best friend, and he's just completely thrown that he can't understand why this fellow would have done that, although he hasn't seen him in years.
So,
but
Gerald,
it's more a matter. It's more a matter of.
Title?
I'm sorry.
How did you get the title for this book? Because it's the preacher stalls the second coming. So the second coming of this
Christ.
Is not a religious book, right? Because we talked about
no, it's not. None of these are Christian fiction, because you're going to. I mean, number one, you wouldn't necessarily call Evan Wycliffe an inspiring character. Okay, he's a flawed character. He has a curious mind. He has an obsessive mind for detail, as most reluctant investigators would. But he's got a problem with alcohol. He's something of a doubter. Some people call him an agnostic, but others might call him a faith healer because he's. Again, there's a reason people keep coming to him with their problems, is because he seems to somehow find his way into the truth when nobody else wants to bother. So there is that, but no, there's going to be more questions than answers. I mean, the engine in these books is, why is there evil in the world, and why do bad things happen to good people? And this just keeps happening over and over again. And it's not like Evan is wearing a badge and saying, this is my job. It's more like somebody from his church disappears, and it's like, this was somebody I cared about. I'd better do something. So the first book, Preacher Finds a Corpse, is more of a why done it. And it's there's some teenage jeopardy, child abduction in the second book. It has to do with the casino culture and some of the, you'd call it mob activity down there. And then this is fictional. Okay. No, not going there necessarily. In the third book, Evan's new wife is in an auto accident, falls into a coma. This is called, the title there is Preacher Raises the Dead. And this one happened during COVID, and he's actually taken on the role of a full-time minister. And so during COVID, he's having to visit the sick and the dying, one of whom happens to be his dear bride. So he's faced with all, and then he's having to not only officiate at weddings, which might have been handled over Zoom, but he's also got to officiate at funerals, which are kind of necessarily live, right, or not. But in Preacher Stalls the Second Coming, you've got an unscrupulous cult leader who is a preacher, a televangelist. He's got a wide following, large base of believers, and he has started a religious compound there in the rural area, and he's inviting disadvantaged and homeless people there on promises of food. and they're showing up in droves. But the problem is, once they get in, they can't get out.
There's actually a movie I just watched about this.
Well, this has happened a few times in history, and there's some other things going on elsewhere in the world these days that are rather like this, but we can't talk about them because those people haven't been convicted yet. So,
yeah,
or if they're going to be, I mean, I don't know. This is fiction, but at the same time, the fact that there are now hundreds of people housed inside this compound and nobody knows what's going on inside. Well, the authorities are reluctant to go in there because, number one, this guy is not preaching anything any different from what other big time evangelists have taught. End times, prepare yourself. He's coming again. Be ready. Fast. Telling people to fast is not illegal. Okay.
Yeah.
But then also, it turns out that he may be planning to fake the second coming of Christ using three-dimensional virtual reality technology.
Oh, look at that.
And all he has to do is convince the people who are there. He doesn't necessarily have to convince the world. Okay, so this is relatively, with today's technology, this is a pretty achievable thing, especially if they're, if they've been told to starve to do themselves in so they'll see Jesus sooner. Now we're talking about people harming themselves, people possibly harming each other because there are some who might be reluctant to go the whole way in the family that's gone there, whatever it happens to be. Well, the authorities, there's not only freedom of religion, freedom of speech involved here, but that's a private compound. And, the local sheriff has got limited resources unless he wants to pick up the phone and call the FBI and hope that they'll bring the National Guard with them. Okay, you don't go driving your squad car onto a compound that's surrounded by barbed wire because there may be a whole barn full of semi-automatic weapons there. Okay, this could be the resistance training, whatever, but the problem is that a young woman from Evans Church and her invalid mother disappear inside there because the daughter's taken her mother for a healing. And they think they're getting out, or they thought they were getting out when they went, but they've been gone for, a while. So that's the engine in this particular book. And then also, when I researched this, one of the things that got me started on this particular title was that I came across the story, and it's a true story. It's not a national secret that in the early 1960s, the CIA planned to fake the second coming of Christ. Now, they weren't going to do this on a global scale. They knew they couldn't probably achieve that. But what they were going to do is park a submarine off the coast of Cuba, fire off a lot of spectacular fireworks, announce over the loudspeakers that Fidel Castro was the Antichrist, get the faithful Cubans to rise up against him. Now, this all came out in the Church Commission report, which was a Senate investigation in congressional investigation in the early 1960s. And it also came out in that report that there were some other things they were planning, like they were going to hand Fidel an exploding cigar. It's just, okay, so you could say, all right, well, that's in the past. Obviously those things weren't tried. But then I was in the middle of writing the book, and I came across research that is very recent. There are conspiracy theories that circulate today on the internet that NASA and the deep state are conspiring to use the internet to fake the second coming of Christ. And the rumor even has a name, Project Bluebeam. So along with chemtrails.
Project Ruby?
I'm sorry?
Project Ruby?
Project Bluebeam.
Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam. So, and there was a book, not that, it was a fairly recent book, in the mid 90s, I believe, by a conspiracy theorist that actually wrote that up. I mean, this stuff is out there. And one of the things that really struck me in working through the plot, because unlike my days of writing to business books, I do not use an outline when I write mysteries. My goal is to surprise myself. And if I can't get my way out of this, maybe I won't publish the book. That hasn't happened yet, but I want to surprise myself so I can surprise you. That's my whole
Well, I think
goal.
that's interesting to do, Gerald, because it makes it fun.
You have
right?
to kind of trust your subconscious. It's like ask yourself the question when you go to sleep, and maybe you'll have the answer in the morning. I mean, or get in the shower. That's another white noise. The white noise of the shower actually stimulates the subconscious. Anyhow, as I was getting into the plot, and I thought, well, wow. I mean, the times that this has happened before, very often it's been in third world countries, or it's been in really remote rural areas. And so you can understand how something like this could go on and people wouldn't know about it. But I was really worried that in today's world, when you've got, GPS satellites and overflying drones and Google mapping and all this other stuff, where is there a square inch on the planet that people, unless the government has blocked that out?
Weston might have been.
where is there a place that this would be able to go on undercover? And then I realized, no, that's not what's going on today. We're living in the post-truth world. So the day that anybody finds a body on that cult leader's compound, his influencers and enablers publish, their own alternative videos, and they're saying, oh, these are just body bags stuffed with pillows. This is the deep state trying to convince you that they're doing something bad. But I mean, the dialogue here, we've had some very unnerving and bizarre dialogue here again south of the border in our campaign year, and it's like, I didn't think I would hear the word internment camps mentioned in a contemporary context.
Right.
And so there have been conspiracy theories in the recent years that, oh yes, these abandoned army bases, presumably the government's closing them to save money, but no, actually they're retrofitting them so they can house, you and me there if we happen to speak out, or we'll be lined up against the wall, whatever it happens to be.
Gently, remember?
Well, and the other thing about, you've got and I think the other thing that I think is very timely about this idea of a cult leader, of an unscrupulous evangelist, and we've certainly had a few of those, but none necessarily who've been accused of this type of crime. But one of the things that becomes very clear when you're paying attention to the news, which some of us are allowed to do, right? No, but not only in this country is now the word authoritarian being uttered in the political discourse. Again, another word that I didn't think I'd ever hear in the land of the free and the home of the brave. But, authoritarian leadership elsewhere in the world, and, on the rise. Now, certainly there have been factions in the past, and they've come and gone, and they, and then, we've got leaders like Berlusconi, in the past, who was actually convicted. I think they convicted him on financial fraud. They didn't get him on other types of abuses, but he ended up with, I want to say, a 2-year sentence, and yet I don't think he was ever behind bars. I think he wore a wrist bracelet for a while, and then he did community service. And after but unlike Bolsonaro recently in Brazil, who has been banned against future holding office, Berlusconi came out of that 2 years and went right back into politics. So it's
Well,
not like,
politics is another kind of prison, right?
well, but the thing, but also you wonder, okay, fringe groups and power groups and cults and um, various types of interest groups, okay, be they on the left or the right. One of the things you wonder why all over the place, not just here. It's not just this one, not just a personality, but all over the place. There's
Yeah.
this thirst for not only strong but powerful leadership. Okay,
Yeah.
you know, the the strong man who stands up and says, "I'll make the bad man go away." Well, history tells us if you're hearing that, that might also be a bad man, and that
Right?
might not end up well. But the thing that makes this more plausible, more understandable, I would say, is, I got a few years on you, and in my
Now,
elementary
do you?
in my elementary school, I'll admit it, it's like, all right, this used to be white, but it was about a week
Well,
ago.
mine was white and gray, but I can
Okay, well, we're this is a post-truth world, okay? Nobody in Hollywood sends out their latest headshots. Doesn't happen. So, but when I was in elementary school, there was one thing, nuclear warfare, that we knew about that could end the world. Okay, today's school children, pick your reason: climate change, nuclear warfare, uh, uh, um, cybercrime that shuts off all the electricity and you can't get, and the supermarkets closed down, or that causes the dams to burst open, or I mean, there's at least 24 world, and that's right, and the meteor that can hit, or the sudden ice age because they got the climate change calculations wrong. That's another one. We are actually overdue for an ice age. They're supposed to happen every 20,000 years. It's been about 19.9.
Right? I think an ice age needs to happen. We need an ice age.
Well, I mean, provided it didn't happen too quickly. I mean, if it took another 1,000 years, you and I might not care too much. But I guess all I'm saying is this sense of terror, this sense of insecurity, of just make it like it used to be. Yeah. And wanting it to be like it used to be doesn't necessarily mean that these people, whether or not they have an understanding of the history of the 1950s and 60s, of how bad some things were then, okay, that's not the top of their mind. The top of their mind is, there were television series about happy families in the suburbs who had, 2 cars and a washer and dryer and a and refrigerator and a freezer. Okay, I recently spent 2 years living in Kenya, and the thing that and it was in a resort town on the Indian Ocean. Okay, my wife was involved in child welfare, and she was teaching underprivileged women, unwed mothers actually, and so this was the working class, if you will, the people who worked in the resorts, and there were the people who were doing the lucky ones that had jobs in the kitchen and whatever. But the thing realized, we stayed in a resort hotel that it was a residential hotel. It was a small place. It was not a new building. It was not a luxury place, but it was a nice place to live. But there were no washer and dryers there. Electricity, ungodly expensive. It's available, but nobody could afford to use it, even if they could afford to buy the equipment. So there was an army of people who came in, and slaved over, wash buckets to just simply to get the sheets done once a week. So, and it's like, wow, that's this isn't primitive living, but it's really, it's not it's not the standard of what one might expect. And but the idea that we would be in any situations where we would have to be resourceful about again, whether it happens to be the survivalist or bomb shelter mentality of, okay, you're stuck with the canned goods that are in your house for the next month. What are you going to do? And I think that there's just this genuine fear that everything could get out of hand, everything could spin out of control. And so it becomes understandable that somebody will say, I'm going to make it okay. I'm the one who can make it okay. And this has happened in history before. And for some people, they did make it okay. And for a lot of other people, they made it very, 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 very much worse. So,
yeah.
And that's part of what this book, that's the fictionalized engine of this book, Preacher Stalls the Second Coming, is you've got this cult leader. Once it becomes apparent that people perished in there, it's pretty clear he was the instigator. Would a court draw the line at, was he the cause? Well, if nobody is willing to testify that they saw him raise a hand to anybody, what do you get him on?
Right?
I mean,
what do you get him on?
and the thing is that when people check into that farm, not all of them are poor. Some of them have vehicles, some of them have farms, some of them have they may have modest houses, but they're signing their assets over. This is done every day in assisted living programs. Okay, I mean, sign your stuff over, and some of them hold them in trust, and your heirs are going to get it back with, not necessarily with interest, but your heirs are going to get back, after your demise. That there are some that are set up that way, but others it's like, oh, this is all you have. Well, okay, we'll take that, and this will cover your care no matter what happens to you. That happens. Okay,
yeah.
So his promise is not terribly different from that. That as long as there's a contract, a valid contract, that is legal. Okay, or can be legal.
So, Gerald, is there a book 5 coming for this seat and for this series?
What did you say?
Is there a book 5 coming for this series?
I told myself after I wrote this one, this one was it was definitely exhausting. It was pretty complicated, and I thought, well, maybe I should just spend the next 6 months talking to Miss Liz and her friends.
We're gonna do tea for 6 months.
And of course, I woke up one morning and it's like, crack the laptop, and it's like, what if the next one isn't quite so dire? And I just felt as though maybe I would. So the tentative title was Preacher Faces of the Music, and he ends up in Nashville.
Ooh. I thought you were going to come to Miss Liz's land.
Yeah, but the trick is getting back.
You just never know, right? Once you're in, you're not
getting
out.
back. Depending upon how long I stay there, the trick is getting back.
Gerald, I want to get into your tea because we're almost at the end. We're having so much fun here. So this time you gave me thoughtful and enthusiastic. Did I get it right? And artist.
Thoughtful
is what you gave me for enthusiastic.
Oh,
and artist.
Thoughtful and enthusiastic artist. Yes,
I got it right. Look at me. Bing, bing,
that
bing.
Would be me, yes. Oh, that would be my. That would be my aspiration, certainly.
So why those 3 words this time?
Well, the preacher Evan Wycliffe. I know I have written in other genres, and I've written literary fiction, and I've even written romantic comedy, prize-winning romantic comedy. But I mean, one of my esteemed colleagues and reviewers, when he was writing about the Evan Wycliffe series, he said, "This is literary fiction masquerading as mystery." And I would say that that was a really nice accusation. And so the idea that, and this is one of the things that I think, this is one of the things that might pull you into this series. It is what one might call an immersive world. Okay, all of these books are centered in this part of southern Missouri, where there are the Coralie Angelides, the waitress at the local diner that come on in. You're meeting her. Every time Evan gets discouraged, he just goes in for a stack of pancakes. And she's gonna get a lot of the local gossip from her. Okay, so you get the feeling. So here's a place to live that's not the place you live now. And it's like the French novelist Stendhal, who wrote The Red and the Black. He wrote that in 1814. Supposedly, it was the first psychological novel because it also talked about what people were thinking, the internal monologues. Novels hadn't done that up to that point, okay? But Stendhal said, the people in Paris are wiser than the people in the country. They're not smarter than the people in the country. They do read, but they read novels. And they see the consequences of bad behavior. Because, see, in the country, Catholic country, especially back at that time, 1814, there was not anything but Bible stories to know if you were living in the country. And you got those from the priests. The church didn't allow you to read the Bible yourself. So are you paying attention to that stuff? The 2,000-year-old, lessons learned, whatever? Probably you don't think it relates too much to your life. I mean, I'm sure there was some people, but if you're picking up the latest Balzac novel in Paris, and one of which is entitled, the plot's in the title, A Harlot High and Low. Okay, there's one that would leap off the shelves today. So you're reading this, steamy stuff for back then, but you're finding out that, it's a really bad idea to cheat on your wife. It's a really bad idea to to try to despoil 14-year-old girls. And all that stuff's in Balzac. I mean, and one of the things I'm really drawn to about, somebody asked me about technological change, and I was talking about impacts on arts and writing, and I would say streaming series have had a huge impact on literature and on filmmaking, because novelists in recent years aspired to at least sell the movie rights to their books, okay? But if you sell the movie rights, your book is used to have to be compressed into 2 hours. What in the back in the day we call the Reader's Digest version. Okay, so basically all the interesting detail gets squoze out.
So are you gonna send any of these books for a movie release?
Over here on the left coast, you don't send anything to anybody. You'll get back a polite letter saying, with a stamp on the envelope that says "returned, unread, and unopened for legal reasons." So unless your new best friend,
deliver.
Unless your new best friend is a top agent at CAA, you're probably not going to get it. That's a separate. But basically what I'm saying is that with streaming, Succession, you've got 13 episodes in a season, and you had, what did they have, 7 seasons and whatever. You have the ability to have an episode, at least an episode for every chapter, maybe multiple episodes for every chapter. Some of your supporting characters can have their own complex subplots, can have their own episodes where the main characters are just kind of like, you just see them getting on a plane, right? So in terms of character development and arc and detail, So with streaming, I don't know about you, but I love to stream, to binge watch an entire series that I thought that I, didn't know anything about. Okay. So I get now, but one of the things I've often said, stop me if I've said this before.
Oh, now he's asking me to remember.
I have never walked out of a movie house after watching a feature film and said to myself, I really miss those guys. But the day after I screened the last episode of Succession, it was like, what am I going to do? Is there any more of this?
I need it.
What happens to them?
Right.
And the thing that's really wonderful about this, it's like, okay, you could say what you want about the rights and the economics and the fact that how producers amortize their expenses, and they shoot an entire season in the space of time that people would, or used to shoot a whole feature. But you can say what you want about that, but back in the day, we're talking about Balzac in the early 19th century, Dickens in the late 19th century. Their chapters of their books, they were paid by the newspapers, chapter, every issue. Wow. And there were people waiting on the steamship docks for Dickens, for a bundle of newspapers to be dropped on the dock so that they could grab one to read the next chapter. And, whatever it was a Great Expectations, David Copperfield, whatever it happened to be. I mean, and that was the other thing. I hope you don't mind my saying this, but a host the other day asked me, said, okay, well, you're a mid-list author, but you haven't been New York Times bestseller list, whatever. What's your definition of success? Now, you might say, oh yeah, sell the movie rights, so pocket $500,000 and some points or whatever. My definition of success would be, fast forward 100 years from now, walk into the college and grab the syllabus from the English professor. If my book's in their syllabus, that's success.
Wow.
And you can look back over the history of literature, and there are books on that syllabus. Now, I don't know how many books Stendhal sold in 1814, but I guarantee you it wasn't 1 million. Okay. So, but there are 1 million books published every year in our wonderful world of digital self-expression and explosion of information and all like that. And the other thing is that, yes, an indie published book cannot be submitted for a Pulitzer Prize. Oh. A major publisher has to submit it. You can't submit yourself. And even if you've won awards for small presses and published, now maybe that a small press can submit. I haven't, I don't know the rules all that well, but the day will come, and I don't know how many years it will be from now, that you're going to open the New York Review of Books and find that the very first self-published novel won a Pulitzer. That will happen. That will happen because stuff gets overlooked. I mean, they can't read 1 million books a year. AI might be able to read about 1 million books a year. It's interesting because there's
that'll be a whole new tea time. I'm telling you, we should do 6 months of tea time.
Seriously, there was an editorial review service that approached me the other day, and it said, yes, we digest your books with AI and we submit a report. And one of the reasons is that we think that there's too many overlooked books. Well, that's a great sales pitch for their reading service, and so they send you this report with all graphs of, how many words of 3 syllables are in this book, what's the reading level, and what's the and what other books are most similar to yours in tone. So okay, you've got maybe a marketing advantage for, oh, my books are like Margaret Atwood's, according to this robot. Okay, great, you know. So maybe again, it's the old Amazon. If you like this, you'll also like Gerald. And fine, great. I'm all for it. So I won't say that, you know, the AI is wrong, but it did seem like it was, I won't say superficial, but it was clear that it was digesting a lot of metrics and trying to find things that it could score.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I would say reading a book with not only sympathy, not only understanding, but not only sympathy, but perhaps with empathy in the future. I mean, movies certainly, you know, movies are emotional roller coasters. That's what they are. That's what they're supposed to be, and it's supposed to take you on a ride. I mean, that's the whole thing. And you know, I think it was Jodie Foster who said, you know, as a producer, she said, you know, people aren't going to remember a word that the actor says, but they will always remember the emotion that was under that key scene. They're going to remember how they felt when he said that. They well, I don't remember he said it. Oh. And that's movies, and that is a difference from, because books are very, is it left brain, right? I think left brain, right? I think books are very left brain from that standpoint. So you can read a book and you can be analytical all the way through, unless that writer found a way to drag you onto that roller coaster and, you know, take you there. But then again, a genre book that's a roller coaster, that might be masterfully done. That might get your breath, you know, your heart rate up. But after you put it down, it's like, you know, it's like eating a box of crackers. It's like, it's just okay. Oh, and by the way, don't drink anything after you've binged eaten the box of crackers, because your stomach's going to expand and you might have to go to the emergency room.
Oh.
If you eat enough crackers and drink enough after you've done it, they will expand.
It always takes us on an adventure.
And you will know what's wrong, because your stomach is going to hurt. Okay? And now, see, we were talking before, lesson learned. I didn't hear this from experts.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you here on Tea Time. We should do a 6-month Tea Time, because we always have so much to talk about and we always have a blast. If anybody would like to,
oh, for sure,
right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
13 episodes, you know, 7 seasons. That'd be perfect.
The series of Miss Liz and Gerald.
You never get tired of these guys, Liz and Gerald.
Gerald, before we go, how can people reach you?
It's GeraldEverettJones.com. That is the author's website. And by the way, my peanut gallery is sounding off here. My Jack Russell Terrorists, must be somebody at the door. Yeah, GeraldEverettJones.com. And there are actually complimentary ebook downloads there for, you know, I can't insist that you leave a review, but I would strongly encourage you, you know, reviews on Amazon do, you know, rising tide raises at least my boat. So,
right.
You know, please do. And, you know, and I'm hoping that, I mean, the Preacher series, you can read them out of order, although they are chronological. But I do make sure that if there's anything that was in the prior book, that you're going to get a sentence or two about why it's important for you to know that. So, you know, there is something of a technique to, you know, book series. And also you want that main character, that investigator, if it is the investigator, to have an arc, to have a character arc. You want that not only over the course of the one book for it to turn out the way it turns out, and for the bad actors to, whatever consequence occurs, whether they happen to be punished or get away, or there are things that are still a puzzlement, that's all possible. But the main character, Evan Wycliffe, is definitely a different character at the end of Preacher Stalls the Second Coming than he was at the beginning. And I would venture to say he probably has more questions at the end of the fourth book than he did at the beginning of the first book. But I will also say that one of the addictive qualities of reading these books is you begin to think along with him, and it's like, yeah, what about that? What about that? What about the idea that in the church we're teaching eternity, the life in eternity. Well, okay, just the other day the physicist told us the universe expands to the point where there's nothing but dust. The difference between 2 grains of dust is going to be light years. Okay, no, there's no complex structure, brain or otherwise, that could exist in that space. So does God have a brain? Does God think? Does God require a complex structure to take care of us, let alone do we survive in any kind of form that would have a thought? So they're saying thought is not possible in that, but then there's science fiction that's been written about that, broke his brain, about the universe reconstitutes itself. I mean, really, there's still questions.
And we're gonna bring Gerald back, because we're gonna do a series, because me and Gerald, we could talk forever. But it was really a pleasure having you back again.
Romantic comedy. We can do that one. I Gold Award in romantic comedy. Oh yeah.
Oh,
that one's about Hollywood.
No, I think we did that one in season 3. Did we not do that?
Oh, Myra and Brad. Yeah, but I think
yes,
since we talked, that one won a Gold Award. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, well, thanks. But
that's cool.
You'd think of all of them, that would be a movie.
Out of that one. Yeah, because we had some fun with that one.
Yeah, call my agent. The guy who told me to have a nice life.
Gerald, thank you so much for joining me for Tea Time for the 3rd time. And come back the 4th, the 5th, the 6th time. You're welcome, Morden. Maybe we'll do a series. We'll do a series. We'll do little clips.
You're so generous with your time, and your ears are so open. I don't know whether that's an accusation or no. I think that's a real gift. Your ears and your mind are open, and
thank you.
It comes across. I thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to all the viewers and listeners tonight. I enjoyed seeing you pop up and joining us tonight. That was nice to see you guys in here. We are streaming now to Instagram, so you may notice that Miss Liz, I think Gerald is my 4th Instagram Tea Time. So I want to know how that's going, how you guys are enjoying Tea Times on Instagram. It's something that's new. So you're number 4. So let's see where this one goes tonight, right? But again, thank you to everybody. Without all of you guys, I couldn't do this. April's press release has gone out for the April guest lineup. So that'll be coming out on the 24th of March. And we're going to be wrapping up March and jumping into April with the last 2 Tea Time guests. Next Thursday, we have Marbeth Dunn's coming in, and we have Donna Conrad's coming back. She's a returning guest as well. See, my guests, they like coming back for more tea. So I guess I'm doing something a little right over here. So until next week, I will see everybody same time, same place, and we're going to bring some more different TEAs to the table for you to enjoy.
Thank you, Liz.